Yeah. Making her way to the mic. They start dimming the lights. You start feeling alright. From Birmingham, home of the Teddy Longs and the Ruben Studders. More once you discover. For all of the lovers, Whitney Houston and Roman Reigns. For all of the lovers, and Mickey James and Marvin Gaye. For all of the lovers, and Sasha Banks, Janelle Monáe, Silk, Sonic, and Paige. Allow me to say, look, I just found a place, sweet escape. Every one of us, I was kinda late, so I just made it off the struggle bus. Walking by the faith, cause I know it's right in front of us. Yo, I ain't with the hate, gotta focus on what's great. Ladies and gentlemen.
Greetings, wrestling fans, and welcome to another action-packed part of All-Star Wrestling.
Hey y'all, welcome to the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl Stephanie Hardy. And this is a special episode for Black History Month. I wanted to do something different. So of course I'm your girl Stephanie Hardy, host and creator and color commentator for the Belladonna Division, Battle Club Pro, and Black Girl Magic 2022, and host and writer for Women's Wrestling Talk. And I wanted to have a special collaboration episode with the best in Black wrestling media for this amazing month where we celebrate ourselves and all of our accomplishments in and out of wrestling. So I am so happy and so honored, my God, to be here with Cal, Drip, and the wrestling chick Mimi of the Black Wrestling Podcast. I am so honored to be here with y'all. I'm so happy y'all were able to come here and do this episode with me live and in color. So how are you guys doing? I know it's Monday, but you know, we're here. So how are you guys?
I'm great. I'm tired though. You muted Mimi.
Yeah, Mimi, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Sorry. I said I'm giggling at Cal because he's cheesing, he's animated.
I'm saying, you see, like
bro.
When I'm saying, like, you didn't see backstage, like when the Hardy podcast intro come up, I'm like, yeah. And then when our podcast intro come, I'm like, yeah, like it's always good to to be seen.
That's right.
And show up to places and feel welcome. So
right.
I don't know. I'm just appreciating all that. I'm sorry.
No, when ours came on, I'm like, why is this on? I'm trying to hear.
No,
I'm trying to hear the other one. Like
prior proper planning.
I love it. I love it.
Well,
a request comes in, you send.
Well, look, it's like I told Cal, I had to do, since it's a collab episode, I wanted the best of both theme songs to play. So there's my song and then there's y'all's song. And y'all's song is amazing. I like it. Like whenever I listen to it in just the audio, I'm just like, oh, I like this. This is cool.
Yeah,
this is cool. But I'm glad you guys do like mine though. Like seriously.
The Ruben stuttered part, I was not like that.
I was gonna say, like, it's cool to have, like, I mean, again, shouts to Sham, shouts to Anakin and Vader for always for the amazing music. They've been supplying us with instrumentals for a minute, but like, it's just us, and then it's like, images of Black excellence, like to see, like, like, you got lyrics in there, it's the home of Teddy Long, and you got all the wrestling, but like, it's cool because it's good to see you and like you sitting down with people and you having content there as well. We'll figure. We're gonna get to your level on the intro one of these days. Trust. Maybe next year. We'll see.
Oh,
I mean, you gotta.
Matt
could probably
thank
do
you
it.
so much. Thank you. Like Simon Vision Media did my video, and then the song was done by Rasslin Flow Josiah. So I was so happy when he did it. Yeah, like he asked me so many questions. I was just like, okay, so how is he gonna put all this together about my life and where I'm from and what I love about wrestling? And he did all that. I was like, Jesus Christ.
Right.
This is amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that.
Mm-hmm. Shout out to Birmingham 205. Not
Right?
205 Live though. But yeah, I just had to I just had to come on here and just guys love, because I remember the first time I saw you guys on Instagram, and I was just like, oh, they look really cool. Like they have this show going on. They have this amazing merchandise happening for you guys. And I just remember the first picture I saw was like, it was a picture of the man formerly known as Hulk Hogan, because we don't really address him as, you know, the hero that we once thought he was.
Facts.
And y'all had a picture of him with a whole X over his picture. And I was like, oh,
You know where we stand. I mean,
yes.
I will say, there's been a couple of things over the years that we've done that have connected, and that was one of the first. When that image came out, I got the hoodie over there somewhere. But when that image came out, people were like, "Yes." It's to the point now where if you see a red X on Rasslin Twitter, it's kind of like you already know what that means, because there's some type of racism or nonsense allegations that follow right along with it. But I salute that. It's always interesting to see what connects for people, and hey, the image says it all.
Yep.
Yeah, it really did. And if sentiments, feeling, it's just picture, I was just like, man, this is go. This is what they stand for, and I'm in love with it. So, and then to figure out the whole show too, it's like, okay, and to listen to you guys, it's like y'all have like the greatest takes, and then y'all just be so silly with each other too. So I love it too. I love it. So I want to ask you before we get into our subject, like, how did you guys come together as a podcast and decided this was going to be, what it is now? Or did you ever imagine it growing it into what it is now?
I will say I've never imagined that after 6 years it would. I didn't think I didn't think we would have hats. I wasn't thinking about shirts or nothing like that. No, it started as literally me. Like I would a while ago, 11 years ago, 12 years ago at this point, I would listen to Meltzer and Alvarez, but I would also listen to hip hop podcasts. I was like, this isn't that hard. And, I got ideas. So I dabbled and made my little, crappy podcast or whatever, but then I stopped for a bit. And in that time, shouts out to Fam and Matt who aren't here. They were working on a podcast of their own. They were building a podcast, the Where's Buffy podcast, which is still out there now. We drop every Friday, premiere, then the following Tuesday it drops on the on all the socials and what have you. But they were doing that, and at a certain point they were like, we want to talk about wrestling, but we can't do it on our regular show. You're not, shouts to Fam. Fam said, you're not doing your show. Do you want to do Black Rasslin again? Because I had time things, like I had new to job stuff like that. He was like, if you don't want to do Black Rasslin, would you allow us to do it? So matter of fact, it was 6 years ago last month. We got on the phone for the first time ever. The three of us had a conversation about the Royal Rumble and everything. And I guess like 3 years later, 4 years later, we're putting out hoodies, we're putting out shirts, we're putting out, annual list of the 50, best Black wrestlers of our opinion who are currently doing it at the time. And at a certain point, we were live, and this guy Drip happened to be, somebody who was in the chat, and he went from the banter back and forth during the live to him sending us like a whole notepad, a stat. He was checking the stats of the show after he listened to the show, and that led to him coming on the show and doing that regularly. At a certain point, we were having conversations with Mimi, saying, Mimi, you come on the show. This would have been this time last year. As a matter of fact, it's been about a year since Mimi's been down with the squad. And I think over time, it's always been, but like I always looked at it, because Black Wrestling would drop at the end of the week. It was always like the last place for pro wrestling news. So it's evolved. We're gonna get the pro wrestling talk at a certain point, but we're really, we're catching up on what's been going on. We're still talking about what's been going on in the world, and like you said, all the silliness and everything. Like I think that's kind of what brings people back. They're listening to find out what type of nonsense we got going on. We've all been watching wrestling. We'll talk about it at some point, and that conversation is great too. Don't get me wrong. We could rope a dope with the best of them, but the show it's bigger than just like the fam always mentions all the time. It's bigger than wins and losses and what move was done to get the pinfall and everything like that. We'll talk about that and the bigger picture, but it's also us as wrestling fans and us as people, and it's that stuff that makes me want to pop on 8:35 p.m. every Thursday to get back on and give some content to the people. Hopefully that makes sense.
It was a journey.
Yeah, that's an amazing origin story. And also, hey fam, thank you for joining us. I'm so happy you guys are here and you popped in. Hey.
Pardon my tardiness. I've had a weekend.
And see, that's the Red X. That's the Hogan Red X shirt that we was just talking about.
Yeah, you know where we stand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fam. I was just telling them that was the first image I saw affiliated with. So yeah.
That's a strong one.
That was just epic to me.
Strong.
So, like I said, welcome fam and welcome all of you to the show. And also thank you guys for watching. If you're watching streaming on all my platforms, thank you guys for watching. But what I do is the subject that we are talking about, and that is wrestling, and where we're at now, and of course where we've been. So, each of you can answer the question one by one. Who was Black wrestling character that you saw and resonated with?
You said the first?
The first one. The very first one.
You go, Mimi.
Junkyard Dog.
That's a good
Junkyard Dog. Didn't really resonate with him because I was 9 at the time. He had a collar on. I think I saw that match between him and Roddy Piper, and I didn't like that dog collar. I didn't like it. It was too vicious. It was too manly. I want to say so. I wasn't into it a lot. I then took a big gap between middle school, I want to say high school, and adulthood. And I came back around the Stone Cold Steve Austin, Mr. McMahon feud-ish a little bit. And then my son turned like 6 months, and then life happened again. And so it was quiet once more, you know what I mean? And so then R-Truth became that next person, like, oh, who's this? And now I'm asking my son who this is. I'm asking him who Bobby Lashley is. I'm asking him who the New Day were at the time, Kofi Kingston, before they were the New Day. So I was getting my wrestling education from, at that time, like a 7 and 8 year old. So they were actually my first real kind of like collective prominent Black characters. Bianca Belair is who I resonate with because I feel like she's the girl next door. As a mom, I resonate with somebody that walks around with pride and decorum, and like she's raised right, so to speak. Like the Cosby Show, kind of like that 2-family home growing up. Yeah. So she was the one that I resonated with the most. I'm gonna throw it to Drip.
Yeah, Drip. What was the first Black character that you saw that you said, you know what, man, that's me right there?
That's me right there. That Black person is me right there.
It was probably because, again, I always say like WrestleMania 20 is the first real like wrestling show I watched that I could fully remember. And I saw two that I would stick with over the course of like watching in early 04, and that was like Booker T coming out with like, "Can you dig that sucker?" I'm like, there's just something cool about that, and like the entrance, and he would do the spinneroonie and like his offense with all these kicks and slams, and he was teaming with RVD at the time. And again, there was a short-lived tag team, but I thought that combination. And then once he went to SmackDown, I was still kind of following him. But then shortly after was Shelton Benjamin, and it was really when he beat Triple H on that Raw, that surprise win. Shout out to the A Show, they just reposted that on Twitter the other day. That was a huge moment I remember, because as a kid, I'm rooting for the good guys to win and beat the bad guys, and there's no bigger bad guy than Triple H at that time. So for Shelton Benjamin to beat Triple H, and then the next time he beat him again after he overcame all the obstacles of Batista and Ric Flair and Randy Orton at ringside, like, I'm rooting for this guy. He's beating the bad guys, so it just kind of carried on. And like, as I would start to watch more and more of him, it's just the springboards and all the crazy moves that he could do. It's like when I would wrestle, like the stuffed animals I had jumping around on the bed, I would try to do some of that stuff, like the T-bone suplex, or like I would jump on the bed and like smash like a clothesline. It was just, I was like super into like what he did. And the biggest one was WrestleMania 21 and the Money in the Bank ladder match, where he just steals the entire show. I remember watching that live with my dad, and I just like, he walks up the ladder, he does the T-bone off the ladder. Just, I've always been into, I guess we just talked about this guy, like highlight reel wrestling in a way. He might not be a flippy type wrestler, but he did so much athleticism, and that's the always thing. Like, as you then start to watch real sports too, like you find out he's a 3-sport athlete and he could have done this and that. To see him do it in a wrestling ring instead just always stuck with me. So I'd say those were my first two.
All right, cool. I'm sorry, I was having technical difficulties. So Megan went, and Cal, did you go, or did Fam go?
I didn't go. I think Fam, did you want to go?
Yeah, that's fine. For me, it's funny because I've been watching wrestling for quite some time now. Seeing black characters and relating to black characters are very different for me, right? Because like the first guys I remember is, you know, Junkyard Dog and the raspy voice and the bigger than life personality. It kind of reminded me of one of my uncles, but I didn't relate to Junkyard. You know what I'm saying? And then you go forward, like you see Ron Simmons, Coco Beware. He's a lot of very, very Southern gentlemen, big athletes, and these were all cool, but I kind of didn't really relate to folks until like they started letting the New Day do what they actually wanted to do. Like, not the beginning of the New Day, but when the New Day started making cultural jokes, stuff that like your average wrestling fan isn't going to get. When they started like, oh, they're back there and they got a voice back there. They're just either someone's just letting them go, or they've got someone like Kaz back there working with them and giving folks like this is us. Like, we just gonna we're gonna present ourselves as us because what you had for us didn't work, and that's kind of always been us here.
Facts.
So really, yeah, New Day.
Facts. I was gonna say Bad News Brown. Actually, I am gonna say Bad News Brown, but only because like it was. I mean, again, shouts to Junkyard Dog, shouts to Coco Bewares and those guys. But I mean, where I grew up, you never saw like, I didn't see too many like just like every day looking like, you know, I don't feel like being here. I just woke up type people in the ring. And I mean, Bad News is more than that, but he looked like somebody who, you know, took off his work shirt to then get into the ring and wrestle somebody. And then when he went there, he's doing, you know, that there was something about Bad News for me early that resonated. And maybe it was the ornery old man in me as a child waiting to, you know, be represented on TV. No, I don't know. But yeah, it would definitely be Bad News.
Was it the fact that Bad News was a karate man?
He was a karate man, and his finisher was the Ghetto Blaster.
Oh wow! It was really named the Ghetto Blaster.
It was a enziguri to the back of the head, and yeah, that was a Ghetto Blaster.
Wow.
Well, and I mean, we'll get into this a little bit, but it was weird because he was a legit karate man, but his gimmick had to be, I'm a mean man from the streets. Like, it would have like the dirty brick wall with the graffiti on it, and when he was cutting promos, but like, he was a karate man from Canada. Wow. Like, he just wanted to, you know, throw people and kick them in the back of the head, but he had to be playing with sewer rats and whatnot, you know, because that was what happened when there was a black person who could work, and that got signed, unfortunately.
Wow. Well, I guess for me, the first two characters I ever saw, in terms of black wrestling would probably have to be Ernest the Cat Miller.
Mm.
And I was a child, so I really didn't know exactly what was going on, but he just looked like he had all this confidence going for himself. And I thought it was cool that he called himself the cat, because I was just like, okay, so you're all right, whatever. Because I was 4 when I started watching. So I was
Oh,
just like,
okay.
Mm.
okay. So I was like, okay, well, you're the cat, whatever. And and then the first woman I saw was Charmel when she was a Nitro girl,
Okay.
Mm.
because they would come on and they would dance and I would dance in front of the TV all the time.
Mm.
So that's kind of what my, thing was. It's like they would dance, I would dance, and that was my dream. I was going to be a Nitro girl someday.
Facts.
I just knew I was, because I just love to dance. Even now I
Mhm.
still love to dance. But life happens, people buy companies, business is business, and dreams die sometimes.
Not necessarily.
Dreams die is funny. Damn.
So that's kind of what it was for me, like, because I started in the 90s. So those were really the first two I saw. And then later on I saw Booker T
Hmm.
and Stevie Ray. And then of course, as it went on, I would see others and stuff as well. So those are really good places to start, and of course, with some of them being, having to start from where they started,
Hmm.
they're backstage, I guess you could say, when it comes to wrestling, a lot of black wrestlers didn't get a lot of respect, in a sense, because
Mhm.
they were sort of giving characters that were sort of stereotypical, or
Right.
really were borderline stereotypical. But it seemed like, even with those characters, they did the best they could with what they had, in order to get done what they need to get done. But it
Right.
wasn't exactly the most favorable situations for them.
Mhm.
So, and that's something that I've heard across the board from a lot of you guys'
Mm.
favorites, is the fact that they had to do certain stereotypical things in order to get their things over, but yet and still they made the best out of the situation.
Right.
So, in like, since Fam actually mentioned the New Day and
Mhm.
stuff like that, what Cal did mention in the chat when we were talking, was us talking about characters, sort of like, I guess you could say, after or post New Day, or to see where we are. Because I know, one of the things that I notice when people talk about the New Day is, like, you have black people who either really love them, or just don't necessarily like them, because they feel like, oh, all they do is dance,
Uh,
and that's just it, or they're just shucking and jiving or whatnot. So how did you guys feel, when the New Day actually first got started? Did you feel like they were shucking and jiving, or did you guys feel like, they were being true to themselves? Or you
what
just didn't know and you were just waiting to see?
I mean, I think the last thing you said is was definitely a part of it, but I think initially I was trying to figure out why the three of them were having like a motivational like spirit, like why the choir was there, like something wasn't making sense to me. But that's because I've been watching Kofi and watching Biggie and watching Xavier Woods, and it did the three of them together being driven was cool, but like the packaging didn't make sense initially. But I think it's one of those things where, just like with anything in WWE specifically, you're given this thing, and you mentioned, people kind of having to take on these stereotypical gimmicks and make them work, like, that whether you're the most racist depiction of a black person, or you're three guys who are supposed to be kind of like heel Jesus people. You have to pick that up and turn that into something, and shouts to them for having the drive to say, look, this is it. That was the other thing, like, for the three of them, it could have been, you're gone. You could have been Future Endeavored if this trio didn't work. So part of it is I wanted to see them prosper. I didn't have Kofi Mania aspirations at all, because I'm a black man of a certain age watching pro wrestling, but I wanted to see it work, and I'm glad that they were actually able to, not only be given the liberties, but be given people that understood them, so they could take that piece of clay and start to mold it into something that became bootios and pancakes. And I mean, even with the shucking and jiving, it's like, I mean, I say what you will, I think there's grander depictions of a shuck and jive, black, especially, in the modern era. I think it's part of the brilliance of what the New Day is doing is we didn't see black people like that before. So, it may look like, I mean, if you want to say they're dancing from Massa or whatever, that's on you. I mean, there are black people who just like to be goofy and have fun and play video games. And when their song comes on, they want to play air guitar or, mime, weird dances. Like, we needed that to get to where we are now, where we're seeing a lot of these characters who are able to be themselves, but also be black, but also be themselves and not have to be a caricature of something we've seen over the years.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Does anybody else want to chime in on the New Day part of the conversation?
So when they first came out and they were doing the Kurt Franklin thing, because they did like separate vignettes from each one of them.
Yes.
I was like, I was split, right? Because I was like, oh gosh, they got these Negroes. They out here at choir practice. I don't know how are you going from Kofi, one of the best tag team wrestlers of all time, to Preacher? How are you going to now Apollo? I'm sorry. When Consequences Creed came in and he was with the Funkadactyls and he was dancing and throwing his Jerry Curl juice back, I said, oh no.
Yeah, that was a bad look.
Right. And then you have Big E, who we knew as this great big enforcer.
Right.
And those three characters. Now, Big E was probably the best at the church gimmick, the preacher gimmick, because his pops a pastor.
Right.
But I'm like, we saw this, like we saw him with Dolph Ziggler and them, and AJ. We saw this. Where are we going? Like, I don't know. I'm kind of scared. But then I'm like, hold on. How do they know about these preachers? Like, who knows about? I haven't seen this, right? Everything up until then, we saw stuff that we would see on all television, or the guy that that works with everybody, the cool guy that might pick up a shift. Like, we've seen those versions of black people, but this was a little more nuanced than I had ever seen. So I'm like, hold on. Even though I'm scared because they are dancing and singing, and there's a black choir in the background, you know what I'm saying? They're doing something different. So I'm gonna pay attention. And then the way they first tried to grab us is when Xavier Woods came in there with they came in with the anti-Farrakhan white suit. Like, he came in with the horn rim glasses, and we were like, and he was like, you guys have got to stop doing this, brothers. I said, the nation is there.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what it felt like. We were like, okay, we as wrestling fans we have this thing in us that we always want to tie something we're watching to something we know. You know what I'm saying? Right. And so immediately, like, new nation. And they was like, we sing for the Lord. And it's going from that to not working and turning them. And then they got to kind of each come out, and Xavier Woods getting himself over with his video game channel himself. It started to give us chances. It's like how, Marvel sees Black Panther does well, so they'll make another movie and let another black man direct it. And it's that thing from New Day that there's so much nuance in the characters now, as opposed to when we were getting the Karate Men and the Dogs and the goddamn slaves with Rob Parker coming in. You know what I'm saying? That we're in such a long time of watching wrestling. It's crazy that just in the last 10, 15 years, we've gotten the most advancement in seeing real black characters. And I think years and years from now, everybody will look to the New Day as those gentlemen who stepped out forward and was able to let them know that, yeah, black characters can work and they don't have to be one or two things.
Right. That's why when we had the initial conversation, it's kind of like post New Day, because there's a definite shift in. I mean, you can. I was trying to make a list, but it's like, you could look at anybody from Hurt Business. I mean, when's the last time, like, talk about people trying to make somebody a new nation? They said, nah, we're the Black Horsemen. We worried about, what these houses that we're flipping, that's what we're trying to figure out, and then we're going to be clear. Like, it's dope to see those types of depictions, and realistically, a lot of that is MVP and Lashley and them having conversations backstage, and then being able to figure out, okay, well, we want to do this. How can we turn this into part of our gimmick on TV? And having, people on the creative team at the very least say, all right, let's try this. Let's go with that and see what works. And us get on the Twitter machines, like, it all works back and forth, but it starts with an idea to make a Black character that is at the very least nuanced or just a tad bit different than what they've normally tried to present us in the past.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just, I remember that entire conversation where everyone online was thinking that they were going to be a new nation. And they were just like, they just knew it was going to happen. Y'all know how we is as wrestling fans. When we see something, we just try to manifest it so hard. And we're just like, no, we know this is going to happen. We know this is going to happen. But then it didn't happen. And there was a lot of panic. But then for me, because I'm positive, and also because, I'm also a Christian and from the South, I saw them, clapping and doing the Kurt Franklin thing, and I actually liked it because that's my favorite gospel artist ever. So I saw them singing, saw them preaching. I was like, you know what, this is like my life, church. Jesus, this is it fit me, but at the same time, I could understand how it could be, dangerous in terms of, a stereotype, because not all Black people are Christian. Not all Black people, subscribe to an organized religion. So the idea that this was a thing was just kind of crazy. And even on the New Day podcast, they mentioned how at first they were supposed to be old timey preachers with old timey, like, golden era gospel music. But then it took them to actually use the courage to speak to, Vince at the time and say, yo, like, gospel has evolved way past this. Let's try this part. And they may not have wanted to, but they still did it. But yet they still made it their own and got themselves over, even, by their own avenues. And now you see them as fully fleshed out humans, because it's like with Xavier starting up down down, he opened a whole door for Black men and just Black people in general who are gamers, who are into the Golden Girls, who are into Disney things, or into sneakers and stuff like that, and help them to be open with that. And they're allowed to be silly, and they're allowed to be goofy on television now, and actually make references to BET Uncut and stuff like that. Like, that's just very specific to us, but it makes sense and it speaks to us. And then a lot of people would think, oh, well, it's not gonna, work, but it winds up working. And it's
Excuse
a
me,
beautiful thing.
Miss Hardy, what you know about BT Uncut?
Okay,
You just
I
told
didn't
us you was a
watch.
Christian. You was supposed to be in bed.
Look, I was in bed, but I had friends who talked about it. Okay, I wasn't doing. I wasn't. I promise. I
Like the
wasn't.
story.
I wasn't fully, like, I wasn't doing stuff like that, but I had friends who was doing stuff like that and talking about it. So.
Go back to the cousins talking about. Have y'all seen BT Uncut? They was talking about it at lunch. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, like, for real, that was me. Like, I was never into all the other crazy whatever. It was everybody else, but I never did that because I lived in a somewhat strict household where it's just like, look, no, like, this isn't good for you until you reach a certain age. So I wasn't looking at stuff like that, but my friends were. So I was just like, okay, well, have fun.
I love it. I love it.
I was looking at it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no judgments here. I mean, that's just, like, you read it, it's fine. There's no judgments here. It's all right. But, and even to go back a little bit before the New Day and even talk about ruthless aggression era, because that's also a part where I was becoming, a little bit older, around 6, 7, 8 years old at the time. It's just, when I saw Black women, you really saw, like, you didn't really see that many. You would see, like, old girl who was with the Basham brothers. I forgot her name.
Oh, Shaniqua.
Yeah, Shaniqua, and she was like the
She's from
manager
Tough Enough,
of
right?
them. Yeah,
Yeah.
Interesting.
yeah. It's just like she was there, and you really didn't see that many other black women outside of Crystal, who married, Teddy Long.
Mm,
And at that point, like Jazz was there, but she was mostly on Raw and not really on the SmackDown side. But I would watch SmackDown the most. But it's like it was very few, black women that you saw and represented in a sort of positive light in a way. And then when you move further into that, you have Alicia Fox, who was an athletic woman, and then she did become Divas champion, but then at the same time she had to act, unhinged all the time.
Hmm.
And that was a little bit rough for me looking back on it, because I'm just like, bro, like why does she have to, act that way when she's already great? She's already a history maker. Why
yeah.
does she have to be crazy? And then you also have Trinity slash Naomi, who did everything she did and how she should have been Divas champion, but then she was faced for a long time and then she turned. And even after she turned, she wasn't able to get a lot of opportunities until like 2016. And I'm just like, bro,
Literally, yeah. Yeah.
why? Like, why does it have to take us so long to be successful in terms of like black women? But then it's just you have to make us act a certain way to get attention and get us over. And then we have to flip flop. It's like there's always a flip flopping with black women. But I want to direct this question to Mimi. Like, Mimi, how do you feel about what you've seen in the evolution of black women and how they're portrayed in wrestling?
I was absent around that time.
Okay.
So I'm not familiar with Jazz's work. I'm not familiar with Alicia Fox's early work. I came into the bad era
Yeah.
once. I think it might have been a little bit like maybe a year before Takeover Brooklyn
Yeah.
with Sasha Banks. And I will say when I saw Sasha's her character in NXT, I didn't like it. I just felt like you said, it was very stereotypical. I didn't understand. It didn't feel natural to me. She didn't feel like she was that girl. But I did not like, the ratchet type of persona. Once she transformed into like a different type of boss, I like that a little bit because I think she got into her nerd self.
Yeah.
And it felt a little bit more natural. And it felt a little bit uh more like her. Uh so I look at wrestling a different type of way because I came into it stagnant. Like I don't have anything to reference really.
Mm-hmm.
So Nation, I wasn't watching at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see a Hurt Business and I see a New Day, that was the first prominent characters that I saw around that time. The church gospel thing, I liked it too. I grew up in the church, but I wouldn't say I'm not a Bible pusher for that. I
Yeah.
was doing bad things while I was going to church.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
we
So
know, Mimi. Oh, we know.
She's watching Uncut.
We
She
are
was
all
definitely watching
we're
Uncut.
She
humans,
was
okay?
watching.
Like we all
so
struggle. It's okay.
oh, now you struggle. Oh.
We all struggle. Sorry. We all struggle.
So I say all that to say I liked it. I look at once I see a character come in, I think Sasha's character was the only character that I didn't like the way she was portrayed. I think her and Bad, they just felt like bad girls, and I like that. I liked that they were just bad girls, just roughhousing everybody. Naomi, I never really had an issue with her because I felt like, again, she felt like she was super athletic. Then when I
Yes.
found out that she was a cheerleader, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like everything just started clicking for me. But the New Day, I never got the shuck and jive feel because again, I don't have anything to reference and I'm seeing it as character and that's
Right.
it.
Right.
And I have a kid also
Mhm.
that that was into wrestling at that time and we would watch it together. So my viewpoint would always be different. I'm only starting to see stuff now, like just little things that I can go back to if I'm watching like an old promo and I'm like, huh. And these guys, Roddy Piper used to be he was one of my top heels on my list. And I didn't watch that Bad News Brown match until like a few months ago, and completely changed my outlook. You know what I mean? Because number one, I didn't see the match at the time. I probably wouldn't have watched that match because it was so aggressive. For a little girl, I probably wouldn't have watched it, but it just completely changed my outlook. The promo between Vince McMahon and Roman Reigns, when he said something about the bone, and like, you remember that? The bone, something about the bone in your father's nose, something like that. Do you remember that Raw promo?
I vaguely remember that.
That was the first time I was like, did he just say that on national TV? I didn't even know they were saying the N-word.
Oh yeah.
Because I was gone at that
yeah.
time. I was
Oh, yeah.
gone. So now
Vince
all
was
of this
saying it.
stuff. That's right.
It was
Yeah,
only
it was
once
rough.
though, right?
But
I think.
There's that one infamous promo. I just looked it up, Mimi. I'm sorry. This would have been December 2015. Vince McMahon said, "Roman, I'd like to remind you, you're just one generation from a bone through your nose."
That's right.
Which is
Yeah.
crazy
That
for
was crazy to me.
2015.
Yeah, for
I was
you to
like,
say
what am I
that to a
watching?
Pacific Islander. No, that was terrible.
That was awful.
It's also true
It's especially in the light of
in
how
pro wrestling.
how Vince and others have portrayed Samoan pro wrestlers. It's sad, but hearing that in 2015 is
yeah. Why your son is sitting next to you and be like, what does that mean?
wild.
Don't worry about that right
So the white man.
now.
No, to be honest, that's how I kind of grew up. So like, not knowing like these are stereotypes that as I'm so young, and I'm really just watching it for the action. Like it's like a cartoon where guys fight in real life, and I'm not really understanding the characters fully yet, or even that the show was scripted. Really, my dad, doesn't have the heart to tell me because I'm so into it. But I would hear him groan and be like this is kind of bad. Like when Crime Time would come out, or the Mexicools, like things that were very stereotypical, and I wouldn't get it until years later that like, oh, there's a stereotype that they mow lawns, or that all guys do in New York is rob, and I would see it then as I got older and wise enough to know what kayfabe is, and then so as I started watching when the New Day, like again, I was kind of into the church going in. I didn't see it as like fully harmful, but I could understand the criticism. But I was just like, I was more so, as we all kind of say, rooting for the individuals because, like Pam said, Kofi Kingston, great tag team specialist. If you saw Consequences, Creed, and TNA, you know that Austin can work. Like he has that skill set, and Big E, again, like was supposed to be this chosen one that they just kind of fell out of favor with. So I'm like, well, if these three guys are going to be put together, I'm going to root for them because at the end of the day, like if you're going to be a good wrestler, I'm always going to kind of root for you. I know the character might be the weak point, like you can only go so far, but I was willing to give this church gimmick while not being the most religious person a shot because I'm just rooting for these guys. I'm rooting to see what they can do. And then as it morphed over time, like Fam and all you are saying, like with their own personalities being intertwined, and now the New Day is just the three of them. It doesn't even stand for anything besides Big E, Kofi and Woods. Like that's them. But yeah, to see, and I guess that's what I was saying earlier with Shelton Benjamin, as someone who grew up to love play sports. Like the knock on him was that he was just a pure athlete and nothing more. He didn't have the charisma or the entertainment factor. And then it kind of worked when they gave him the gold standard. But even then, I was just like, not much. And we're lucky today that the New Day has kind of spawned someone like Carmelo Hayes in a way who is almost like Jalen Hurts meets Shawn Michaels. It's like what we were saying earlier, like her business was, what if the Four Horsemen were black, or what if Evolution was black? It's you kind of like now they can flip the script of like what past gimmicks worked with these new actors. It's like you can recycle an old movie and just not just to diversify, but like we have more talented actors that can play these roles. And that's what I think is happening with a lot of the wrestlers today that is working so well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Plus
like
one.
absolutely, like because it's just when I see the Hurt Business, it makes me think about Godfather of Harlem, and it makes me think about this movie my dad watched called Hoodlum. I think it had
Damn,
Fishburne
damn,
in it.
Steph. Jeez.
You know, Mobb Deep was on that soundtrack, man.
Right.
What an
Rap was
interesting
never,
film.
man.
I saw that in theaters. It's the only time I saw it.
Right.
But
Oh,
both
yeah,
of those,
like,
it's funny, but both of those are depictions of Bumpy Johnson.
Yep.
you're the same
Yep.
person, yeah.
Mhm.
And it's just like when I see the Hurt Business, I see that, and it's just like, and it's just like, that actually fits a little bit more. That's a little bit more nuanced in a sense, because that's what I grew up seeing. Like my dad, of course, he's a wrestling fan. He's how I got into it.
Mm.
But it's just like watching him, look at other parts of Black culture and seeing how it can sort of inform wrestling. It just reminds me of certain things.
Mm.
And it's just crazy, how stuff like that happens. Because every time I see the Hurt Business and I see MVP, I just see, they're just like these suited gangsters who could very well be your deacons at a church, but then they be driving their Cadillac somewhere, and then they could
The
be
first
getting some
Deacons I
business done
knew,
and beating somebody up.
Right.
You just never know. It's
Right.
crazy.
the first Deacons I knew were also gangsters.
Well,
See, right.
well, Steph, I was gonna say, I think the one interconnected thing with a lot of this is the Black performer being able to have input on their gimmick and their character. I mean, Mimi mentioned Bianca earlier, when you especially talking about her being an around the way girl. I mean, when we first saw Bianca back in NXT, it was pure athleticism. I remember seeing
Yes.
the first couple things I saw her doing was like, I've never seen, damn, a Black woman, damn, a woman. I've never seen a pro wrestler work the way she, like, there's something going on there. You need to keep your eyes on it. And the way she's been able to keep her earrings, keep her hair, I mean, she's sewing her, like she's been
Authentic.
she's been able to keep her authenticity because she's been able to be it's so much her, like it can't be anything but her. So it's one of those things where I'm glad that she is as great of an athlete that she is, because you can't deny it. You can't deny a Bianca Belair, and with that charisma and with that ability to do it for herself, it's I've never seen a Black woman like that walk down to the ring that looked like somebody who was the woman that everybody was trying to get with on the block. I mean, just because she just had it, whether you liked her hair, whether you liked her swag, whatever it was, she just had it. You get to see, and you get to see that in more of the depictions, whether it's a Jade Cargill puts a lot of her puts a lot of that out there, and she's kind of a different entity. Like the physique,
Yes.
people compare her to Goldberg. She's not even compared to any type of woman in her field. She's a specific prototype of pro wrestler, and that's not stuff we were getting before New Day. It's not stuff we were getting 5 years ago. I mean, this is all very recent.
Yeah, and what's
100%.
so funny, the first time I saw Bianca Belair with those earrings on, I was just like, those are the earrings you would find at a beauty supply store
Yeah.
Yep.
up
My
the
aunt,
street.
my aunt wore them earrings. That was the 80s.
Yep.
But yeah, like it's just like, and then even with seeing, talent like her be, being herself, it's just like you have people who've never watched wrestling, never wanted to watch wrestling. They see her and they want to do it. Because my mama, who isn't really a wrestling fan, but she only knows about wrestling through my dad, it's like she sees Bianca and she's just like, you know what? I want a Bianca shirt. You know what? What is Bianca doing? Why is this girl beating up on her? What's about to happen here? Like, that's my mama. Like, she loves Bianca Belair so much.
Immediately,
Yes,
yeah.
immediately, because she just looks like, she's that girl that you would want to be friends with. And even with Carmelo Hayes. And I love how Drip used the analogy of Jalen Hurts and Shawn Michaels.
That was a perfect one.
It's perfect because it's just like when I see Carmelo Hayes, he reminds me of the dude that's like popular. He's like the popular athlete, who has his friend that loves to jaw jack or whatever, but all the girls want to date him.
That's right.
Because he's that dude, and he might have a heart of gold, but you don't know.
Right.
Because he just comes off real arrogant or whatever, but he's the best in what he does. And then every time he has a segment where he's at the barbershop.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I want to just
love
die.
those. I love
love
those.
those so much.
The
Like, I love
barbershop.
that.
the t-shirts with the RIP on them. Like there's a lot of cultural references that you wouldn't be able to see anywhere else. There's no other time like right now to get the stuff that Carmelo and Trick are doing on TV every week.
And that's why you have to look like again to the real life inspiration and just like what's changed in the real world. Like Bianca Belair is basically Serena Williams when you talk about someone who was authentically themselves, and we saw them like no one looked more natural at tennis than her. Just like Pam always said about Bianca Belair in the early episodes, like no one has an offense that looks more natural to Bianca than Bianca Belair's. Like she can do a 450, she can pick you up, she can run as fast as you like, she can do it all. And that same energy that Carmella Hayes has and others, again, the reason we say Jade Cargill is Goldberg, like she just runs through these women like it's light work. Like you see her, like she's towering over these women. That's what you would expect her to do. Like,
seriously.
Yeah.
And even with Carmelo Hayes, it's like that's LeBron James in the shop. Like they like let's incorporate something in the mainstream that we can bring here. Like what if two guys just talked about that's our instead of having a promo in the ring, we just go here and you film us talk about you know the match that we're building up to and why I'm the best and give you something to look forward to. You know, make things different and update them.
Word.
I think even with the barbershop thing, I think more of it is more cultural, but then they can sell it with the LeBron James piece, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Because they can give you
because that works.
You a touch point. You give them a touch point there where, oh, okay, I've seen this. Where really, I just want to talk because we talk crazy in the barbershop.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's what I want to do. I want to talk as crazy as I want to about who I feel like I am as a character, and it gives you another touch point for me. Now you want to be like, all right, his in-ring segment is what it was. His promo is what it was. Now you have this new piece that's like, oh, I've never seen this if you aren't familiar with the culture.
Facts.
And now you have like mad avenues to like reach out and gravitate toward this character. And I think that's really what's important about the progress that has been made on the backs of the New Day.
Right. And Mimi, you did mention something about Mercedes / Sasha and how she was the boss, you know, and how you may not have liked that iteration of her character. But I guess this sort of brings a question, you know, I guess for all of us, like to consider, like, is it consider a stereotypical character if the person themselves or if the star themselves comes up with it? Because I know Sasha did say that at one point, you know, when she was trying to create a character, she was afraid she was going to get cut, and she was talking to Dusty Rhodes about it, and she came up with the boss character on the sole purpose of the idea that Snoop Dogg is her cousin, and people always call him the boss. And so she sort of took that element of it, and then also took elements of hip hop culture and rap culture and sort of, you know, added that to her brand, and that's how the boss thing became a thing. So it makes me wonder, like, is it necessarily stereotypical if the superstars themselves, you know, suggest it or come up with it, or is it, you know, is it more of an authentic thing?
I think it's tough because I don't want to say it's a case by case situation, but it really is kind of what is being presented and what's the context. You know, I wouldn't look at Mercedes as Sasha Banks as the boss as being a like a stereotype. Like it honestly, it just felt like she said, hey, Nicki Minaj is popping right now. Let me figure out how to bring that energy to a pro wrestling ring. You know, that's influence to me than anything. But it's one of those things where it's a delicate, you know, balancing act. I mean, this isn't black at all, but I was just reading about you know, I was reading something earlier about Lacey Evans, you know, and the idea of Lacey Evans going down to the ring and dissing a disabled person. Now, there's a couple ways you could look at that, right? It's like that person bought a ticket, that person is a fan. I shouldn't treat them any different than anybody else. And, you know, there's some people who would justify that, while other people would say, hey, that looks crazy. You know that's going to look crazy. You're wilding right now. It's two schools of thought with certain things, and I think it's when you get to a black character who isn't somebody that you normally see, but you can't. It's hard to tell where the line of this is a good pro wrestling, gimmick. This is good pro wrestling acting, or this is just some very stereotypical nonsense. I think that's why I've always been an advocate for having a Kaz in the room, having somebody in the room who is of the culture and who understands how the nuance and how people speak, so things feel authentic when they're coming out of these characters' mouths, as opposed to some corporate speak that isn't connected with anything that's going on.
I agree with Cal, because I think how it's delivered and how it lands plays a big part.
Right.
And that's the one thing that we also have to remember is every black person doesn't have the exact this is what the diaspora is like. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So a character like a Sasha Banks might be based off of something she saw and not necessarily something she lived in, which is why quite possibly she came across that way to Mimi at first. It's like maybe she ain't. You know what I mean?
That's not what she's not.
You know what I mean?
You can be Snoop's cousin, but you're growing up in New England. You're interpreting things a certain way. And how you're living. So
that's right.
Yeah, and then you also have to take in the idea that she's also, from a different cultural aspect, in the sense that she's also biracial too. So
Mama was raised her.
So it's a lot of nuance to it, but at the same time, I just felt like that was just a good question to ask, because it's just like, we try, because of course we all know that Black people aren't monolithic. We are all of different experiences and stuff like that. But of course, when you're on television, you add in the entertainment aspect of it all. You need to do, what's going to pop off in order to keep your job.
Yeah.
Right.
And sometimes, it might come off as an uncomfortable thing, for us to sort of contend with. But I feel like it's all in what you make it. And as long as you can, add stuff to it that feels, authentic, like you guys are saying, it tends to come across a little bit better. And I'm just really happy that we're having this conversation and we're living in this place where now we're having all these different Black wrestlers across the board, all across the board, with these different characters, even in the independents. It's like you have Karen Bam Bam, who is the conductor. You have Willow Nightingale and all of her happiness and all of her, thick and juiciness, like in the tag team and all of that. And then you also have the Renegade Twins and the Vanity Twins and Shalonce. And so many of these women, and even men too, and even Amber Rodriguez, before she retired, she was the esthetician.
Yeah.
Facts.
And that was really cool. And and that's really cool. And that's actually manifesting itself on Wow Superheroes now. It's just like with stuff like that, it's like now you're seeing more of us in a more nuanced light. And I'm so happy that that's happening. My only regret is that I wish it happened when I was like a kid.
Right.
Like, I wish it happened when I was like 4, or like 5. But either way, I'm glad it's happening regardless, because the kid in me still lives.
Yeah, because you see,
amen.
And when you say that the kid in me still lives, when you see Bianca Belair coming down that ramp with a band, an HBCU band,
oh God,
and she is in her glory. I mean, seeing her come down to the ring for her and Sasha to be the first 2 Black women to headline a WrestleMania. I mean, it just brings goosebumps, emotions. Whoever you are, like, you can't help but feel that feeling of we have arrived. You know what I mean? Especially in this total white space, on all levels. And here we are, like, shining as content creators, shining as performers.
I remember that Saturday night at WrestleMania. My son used to go with me to all the pro wrestling shows when he was little, and he stopped watching, playing video games. Salute to my son, piece of Jaden. That Saturday, piece of loud. That Saturday where it was Bianca and Sasha was going to be in the main event. He was downstairs. If I'm not mistaken, it was Lashley was the first match on that Saturday night.
Yeah, Lashley.
Yeah, he was.
And I was like, I'm admitted, I was not the biggest Lashley fan for a while.
Same.
For a while. But I that day, there was I don't know if it was the liquor. I don't know what was going on, but when I saw like being you talk because you said something that resonated. You talk about wishing that you saw this stuff when you were younger. Like again, we're decades into being pro wrestling fans, and I never thought when I was a kid that I would be able to see not just a black champion, but like a dominant, tough, strong black dude who you knew was going to be a problem for whoever was in the ring facing him.
Right.
So when Bobby Lashley came down to that ring, I got to just y'all throw up the ones that appreciate Roman Reigns. I got to do that for the Hurt Business every time because I mean the algorithm was supposed to work like this. Something was awry, and I was able to be around and be alive when a dominant force like Bobby Lashley was champion. So I will always champion that above everything else because it just means that when the kids who haven't even started watching pro wrestling in 20, 30 years starts getting into it, will be in the mix more often, and it won't just be these guys steal and this black woman is loud or whatever. Like it'll be actual people that you can meet in real life and not these random caricatures.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we have. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, I was saying, and that's why we have someone like Ricky Starks, who we call the Rick, the Pebble, because he basically, what if The Rock existed now, and The Rock back then had the Versace shirts and the sunglasses and all that, but Ricky Starks is more modern. Like if you look at the curves of GQ, that's how he dresses. Like he doesn't just dress like how The Rock would now. He dresses like how Harry Styles would dress with the pearls and the open collared shirts. Like it's more modernized because now people can be influenced by everything and take from every part of it.
That's right.
So when you see it happening now, it just goes to show, like, again, he doesn't have to be what just The Rock was back then. Oh, I just got to wear the most expensive stuff. No, I can the stuff that's most flashy and like the biggest pants or the shoes with no socks. You just got to stand out and like wear something to be different. That's what everyone else does pretty much. So be authentic to themselves.
That's right.
Yeah, and I don't know if I've ever said this publicly on my show, but I love Ricky Starks now. Like he is cool.
Amazing.
He is so cool. Like he should be champion now.
Yes, he should.
He really should be champion now.
He
like
should.
in my mind, he should be champion. But problems, issues, things.
Fam said slow down. Fam said slow down, but that's another conversation.
And the thing is, and I think Ricky is dope. I think the one thing that I love about pro wrestling, right, is the purpose of pro wrestling is to make you watch next week, right? And that being the case, I think one of the worst things you can do with a pro wrestler is hot shotting, right? It's something about that slow burn with the character, man. Let them get there. And I think that's the case for Rick. I think every time we see Rick make an incremental step forward, it makes us want to watch next week instead of just that announcement. Next week is Rick versus MJF for the championship, because we know he's not going to win, right? Which happened. But you know what happened after that is he starts getting booked in actual feuds, and they bring the character along and they tell you that story, and they do that thing that pro wrestling does better than anybody else, and it's make you want to watch next week.
Facts.
I just think that Ricky Starks is there already because of his history and the way how everything just comes off naturally. I think he's been there. So I think
he's ready.
I don't think it's a hot shot. I just think that he's there, and that roster is just bloated, and he's just being dealt a different hand, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's really difficult, but it's like Fam said, like maybe it will take a slow burn for him to really just, cook and then succeed. But it's like I was telling you, Mimi, on Twitter when we were having that conversation about Bianca at first and how she didn't win the NXT Women's title, and how at the time I was upset because I wanted Miss Ma'am to get her thing, but she had it, and she was just like, and you was like, no, it's okay, because sometimes you have to have patience. But I don't have patience. Like when I see greatness, I was like, let them be great now.
Let
like
them
that's
be great.
what I want.
That's right. That's
but,
right.
you know, sometimes you do have to be patient, and you
Mhm,
know,
mhm.
and it wound up working out in the end because look at
Mhm.
Bianca now.
That's right.
She's it, like she's everything. But you know, at the time, you just want everybody to get their things,
That's
and
right.
then you kind of just, and when you see it with just that tunnel vision, you're just like, man,
That's
they
right.
doing her wrong.
That's right.
Well,
That's
you look
right.
for it like for the rite of passage type of thing. That's what was really unfortunate about Apollo Crews is that he kind of got pushed up way too soon because he didn't even
Yes.
get a chance to be
Yeah.
Mhm.
an NXT title contender like how it was
That's
kind
right.
of foreseen he could have been. Or luckily the Street Profits did get their chance, but then they
Mhm.
got called up right at the same time. We were doing that weird back and forth where they were NXT champs on Raw, and it's like they
Mhm.
see the vision with these guys, but they finally gotten their shot at the top. Let them have the run now. And that's why it
Right.
was so mishandled with them at the time. It's because
Mhm,
you look for them
mhm.
now that like they're finally going to get the shot now that the cycle of NXT it goes in and out. Now it was Bianca's turn, but they were like, no, it's still going to be Rhea Ripley's turn, and then Charlotte Flair is going to come in the picture now. And that's why at the time it still made sense for it to be a triple threat because the story worked so well. Of it's this woman's turn, and this other woman's coming back down and interfering in that, and it could have
Yeah.
worked for all three of them at the same time, could have vied for the title, but like both of you were saying, like it worked out in the long run, so
Yeah.
we can't complain now, which is the best part.
The one person it didn't work out for was Keith Lee.
Mm,
And
Yeah.
that is the one
Lord.
character that I really wish that went a different route.
They definitely dropped the ball.
Well, that was the thing. He won the titles, and they again it was that thing like, well, we want him now. But it's like he's just gotten his turn. Like
That's right.
He needs to run through some guys, or like don't just call him up now. And it was the moment of like him, like Hal said, holding those two titles. It's like that meant something to do that. And
But you figure like they had the titles. He had no shirt on. He had no tunic on. They put him on the roster. They covered everything up because they didn't think he looked presentable, and it didn't work. And they didn't let him talk. And they didn't let him be himself because, like we've been talking about, in these days, let the black people ain't just one thing. Keith Lee is not going to be Bearcat. He's not going to be whoever they wanted him to be. Keith Lee is a well-spoken, different type of black person who can also
go.
He can make your Canadian destroyer look amazing while also choke slamming you and doing all this other stuff. Like Keith Lee is different. He's not going to be put in a box, and they tried to put him in a box, and now he's in AEW. Like it's almost like the conversation we've been having. Keith Lee is an example of when you mess it up.
Yeah,
you feel me?
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the thing is Keith Lee is as different a personality as he is an in-ring performer. He's a hybrid. He isn't one thing. So if you try to, and that's the one thing that pro wrestling in general has a problem with, is they want to contextualize everything. This has to be that, and this is just like that. This is why I am getting a little tired of all these tribute spots in all these matches or all these programs. But sometimes you got to let new things be new things. And if not, you're going to try to attach these things to the past. And that's what they're going to end up being, is something left behind.
Yeah.
Facts.
Right. And then it's just when you think about him attaching them trying to change Keith Lee and then attaching that to the past, it's like I'm a nerd, so I'm gonna go back and look at who Bearcat was, but everybody's not gonna do that.
Right.
You know, and it's just, why change something that's already good? But then of course that was in a different regime, and now it's with this I have to say creative regime, because Mr. McMahon just don't want to, leave stuff alone. But he's back on the business side. But in this creative regime, it looks like there's more freedom and more availability for people to truly be, who they are.
Yeah.
I wonder what Keith Lee could have done. Like if Keith Lee was in WWE right now, if it would have been a different problem. Because even in AEW, like he went over there, he was able to do his thing, but then it was Swerve in Our Glory. So he's part of a tag team act, and because of that, he's on TV every now and again, but he's not anywhere where he was when they were having the titles a month or two ago, whenever they lost the belts. But it's if I wonder what would happen if he were to be on Raw tonight. You know what I mean?
Because we see what happens with an AEW. The idea is that they do have their own creative control, and that's why again Ricky Starks can do what he wants. Jade Cargill, Stokely Hathaway, they can kind of be who they want to be as characters and whether that's authentic to them or not. But they can kind of do what we think they would do on Raw if if the right person in charge, being Triple H or whoever, would know what to do now because he has the reins. And that's why, whether you like him AEW or not, at least they're kind of doing something that they want to do without the, oh, you can't do this, I'm going to have you do this instead.
Right.
But even like Mimi has said, the bloated roster and other things just get in the way of them shining and all that. The crowd can be cold on you one night and then hot for you the next. That's the other part of it.
Right.
Hey, listen, pro wrestling bookers, you can't solve all problems by standing your wrestlers next to rappers, but
that's a good point. That is a good point. That's a great point.
Yes. And it's so funny because I remember a few years ago, I was saying that there was a rap and wrestling connection at one point because you had, of course, Josiah, who was still working with them, and you had Bad Bunny, and then you had other people, collectively coming out and saying that they love wrestling. You always have Wale, and so many different people coming out and saying, that they liked wrestling, like Cardi B and stuff like that, and how she got into it with Lacey Evans. I'm still waiting on that match, but it's just like you saw all of that, but
turned
then
into a shoot.
it was hilarious, but I loved it. But then it's just like, it makes you wonder if AEW could very well be using that as a crutch, because here again, every black person may not necessarily be into the whole rap thing.
Right.
So it's just
facts.
Like you can use it and it might work for a certain, percentage of black people, but it might not work for everybody.
That's not because the whole audience is singing the Jericho theme song, including when they pan the audience, it's black people singing that too. Like you got you got to reach the black emos and the black punk rockers and the black video game people too. Yeah,
the black introverts.
Facts.
That's right.
Introverts.
Yes. Shout out to my boyfriend. He is one.
There you go.
He is an introvert. So it's just like you have to be able to reach everyone. But it's just, I'm just really happy that we're in this place where we can, have all of these different, black wrestling stars out here. But before we get out of here, I have to ask you guys, what is something that you want to see in terms of black wrestling media? And how it is growing and how, and with us being a part of it collectively, what is it that you guys want to see more of, in terms of black wrestling media?
I want it to not need to be a thing. And I know we're really far away from that, right? But I want our voices to be valid enough that there isn't a separation in what a Cal says and what SRS says. It needs to be, we need to validate
at the table. Yep.
Correct. We need to validate our voices ourselves to the point where everyone else understands that we are valid voices in the space and not a second tier, not a novelty tier, not somewhere where you want to make your bones off of, well, I had some black people on my show yesterday. So at this point, they're just part of what it is we all do. And then there does not, there is an even playing space. And I know we are quite a ways from that particular positioning, but I think that for me is what I would love to see.
No, I agree. That's the whole reason I even started Black Rasslin is because I knew I can do it. Ain't that hard to get on and this. I'm gonna let y'all know how the podcast is made. Before we hit record, Steph was like, "Yo, I'm a little nervous. I don't really do this all the time." And I'm like, "Yo, we do, like, you're good. Like, we do this. Like, it's week in, week out. We hit record and we have these because it's just reps. It's just rep. Meltzer didn't become this wrestling guru or whatever people think he is because he's the one guy. It's because he did it all the time and he's been doing it longer than other people do. So that's just the source. We need to start saying, hey, I rock with Steph Hardy. I rock with Black Rasslin. I rock with the Public Enemies. I rock with whoever. There voices out there that understand what I'm talking about, and we need to amplify them. So when a news story breaks, if it breaks on a Black Rasslin, it breaks on a Harley Wrestling podcast, you aren't looking for Wrestling Observer to co-sign it. It's validated because it dropped on this outlet. It's not a black outlet. It's not whatever. It's just a wrestling outlet that I go to because they rock with what I'm in tune with. But and like Fam said, it's going to take time. Like that's my dream. My dream is for the BRP 50 to be seen as equal as any of these other lists that people have in terms of notating what Black people do. It'll take time, but it's really about the community saying we're gonna put this up just like we put everything else up, because at the end of the day, it's just people having opinions and people how they feel about things. But that's on us to empower ourselves, you know.
And I want to see. I think you guys do a very good job, especially when you do a lot of these Comic-Con fests. You guys are out there, and I love to see Black women in that media space. And you take your opportunity, and you are good at what y'all do, you, Trina, and the whole crew. So that's what I want to see. I want to see the women in the space, and I want to see the allyship, the true allyship for us women, you know? But you will always have an ally in me, and I think that we all need to be allies of one another, including Black women, you know? So we tend to try to step on each other's toes. We see it all the time, and the Zeus Network showcases that every single week, with women always pitting women against each other. And
Right.
so the more we show allyship within each other, the more we'll get those opportunities. But I just love to see y'all out there like that.
Thank you. Like, shout out to Women's Wrestling Talk and TK, because it's all her, it's her baby. And we just help to take care of it all of the time. So it's just, and if you love women's wrestling, you just have to water it. And we just try to water it as best as we can.
That's
And
right.
so it's great. And we love that, we love it when you're a part of it, when you can. And it's just, as we continue to grow, like, I just can't wait, to see how far we go. Like, I want us to have it all. And we work really hard. So it's just like, the more we work hard, the more opportunities and blessings.
That's right.
Come. So, Drip, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, it's just to say that again, like that won't be a place that is excluded and that you can't go to, where it doesn't be the mainstay, like Kyle and Fam are saying, like where you have to go to Fightful or the Observer. It becomes a prominent fixture where it's not just that's where you want to go if you want to make a splash or make news. Like it can just be to this person again. So that's self-sustaining, and that everyone has a shot to participate in. And sure, I mean, it might take a while to get there, but you see the timeline. It's run by all these accounts and all these personalities, and they almost take from that more so than anything. And that's where it's like, it's the people who are running these accounts or the people responsible for it themselves that are dictating what should be done. And again, this idea or that idea, a list, a podcast, a panel, all of it. So for that to carry on and keep going is something that we still need.
Yes, absolutely. And I always say, and I feel like for those who listen to my show, I say this ad nauseum, but either way, I want, everyone, every person of color, especially Black people, to have more to say in the intellectual space, not only just media wise, but also creative wise, and also on commentary, and also we're here in ring announcing. You see us there in refereeing, of course. And shout out to the ones who do that, and the ones who are writing for creative. But I want to see more of us, at the table, and not just, mediating conversations by the men, but I want us to have the conversations about wrestling too. Because we know just as much, if not a little bit more than the men do when it comes to wrestling. And I want that to be represented. So that's just what I want. And maybe we'll have our own wrestling network like ESPN or something. Like, that's what I'm pushing out there. Like, I really would want that. Like, if wrestling media had its own thing.
BSPN?
BSPN, exactly. That part, like, that would be great too. And it would just be really, grand. And more commentators, like, hello, I do that too. So it's like, if y'all want to hire me, put me,
Wait.
hey.
All right, so Steph
So,
Hardy, I'm sorry. So was it Black WrestleFest? You was on the
Black
panel?
WrestleFest. Yes, I was.
Black WrestleFest, the first time I saw you in real life, and it was dope to see, because you got a little emotional up there.
Yeah.
since then, it was legit like, oh, Steph Hardy about to commentate this show. Oh, Steph Hardy got and it's again, it's been really dope to see because like what you're talking about is what you're doing. You feel me? Like you're the beginning. You're the new day of Black women specifically being out here in being out here in wrestling media and not being I'm a Black woman in pro wrestling media, but I'm a pro wrestling fan who happens to be a Black woman, and you need to listen to me because I know what the hell's going on. Like it's what at the end of the day, like what we need to do is keep laying the foundation because it's about the kids in the wrestling. One of them kids in the wrestling club who's at Raw while we're recording this is going to at one day start a podcast or start a blog or start a something with pro wrestling, and it's going to be that next thing for Black people, pro wrestlers in general, to get to the future. So we just need to keep kind of nurturing and sowing the seeds. So when hopefully 200 years from now, they're like, yo, remember when Steph Hardy was the first time she did this event or the first time Black Rasslin was talking about this, and you see the progression. Like we just have to keep doing the positive, important work because in the future, the hope is that it reaps the rewards.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you really
No
mentioned
doubt.
you mentioned a super important part of really not even just like pro wrestling and Black folks, but Black folks in general is you have to have the weekday pieces. And what I mean by that is we all see the wrestlers. We all see the people, the managers and the things on TV, but the people, the cogs, the things that make things work. So the weekday pieces, you know what I'm saying? Is you see all the clothing brands, but who's making the socks and the drawers underneath of it?
Who's sewing
Like,
it? Yeah.
Right.
so you have to have all those pieces to create a system that's really self-sustaining. And that goes really back to what we were saying is that if we validate each other, the success will come automatically.
Yeah, I will say Mike Walker. I don't know who you are, but yeah, in my job, if I could get more Black women who can write and write well to talk about pro wrestling, I would. It would be an amazing for me. I'm waiting for. I don't know what Mimi's doing with her pen, but I'm waiting for some strong Black pieces from strong Black women about pro wrestling because I mean I'm trying to put voices out there. Like there's people who are in a pro wrestling and need to be heard, and it don't need to just be me. It don't need to be Drip. It don't need to be Fam. We need to elevate some of these other people who have been watching for years and understand it sometimes better than we do because it's things that we don't know about. But that's on. Like it's on us to elevate, and then it's on them to notice. It's a two-way street. Anyway.
Yeah, that's why it's important to shout out like the Krista B's, the Queen PRs, Keeks, Hearts, Sandal, lovely, all the women in the space. And I'm trying not to forget any, but there are just so many that their voices aren't on the biggest platform yet. But if you keep listening and sharing them, one day they will be. And like Hal said, like one day that'll inspire the next generation, or maybe they're already listening now. And that's what's going to motivate them to get started as soon as they can, because you never know.
Facts.
Yep. You never know who you're touching with your work. So I'm just really happy. Oh wait, hold up. Oh,
It
I just
is
had to put that comment.
a wrestler fan in Birmingham. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, we in here, okay? Big Bama energy.
Facts.
But this was an amazing conversation to have with you guys. I really respect and love y'all so much because y'all are like pioneers and y'all y'all paved the way for me to even start what I do and do what I do. So thank you guys for coming on the Hardy Wrestling Podcast
Thank you.
and doing
Thank
this
you.
collaboration with me, and hopefully I can have you guys back, whenever y'all want to be back.
Say the word.
So please just tell everybody where they can find and follow you guys for the podcast itself and also individually too.
I mean, I don't know how much time I want to at Black Rasslin on Twitter. BlackRasslin.com is a website. Black Rasslin, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you go to the Twitter, all of our individual Twitter accounts are there. That's probably the best way to follow all of us. Every Thursday, 8:35 p.m. YouTube.com/Black Rasslin. We're doing this. There's more 4-letter words. There's more insanity, but there's also a
There's
lot
one
of
other person.
yeah. Shouts to math. Math is at the game or whatever. But there's a
Yeah,
lot
shout out to
going
you.
on. But we still have this pro wrestling conversation. So if you've not heard of us before, hopefully you rock with us and you're get a drink on Thursday. And tap in on the YouTube. You see what happens. But no, Steph, for real, thank you. I think we always collab. I just love when people say, "Hey, y'all want to talk about something for a bit?" But it's great to go elsewhere and have these conversations because hopefully this is the unity that we've been talking about all night.
Of course, of course, of course, of course. Anybody else want to chime in? Tell where they can find and follow them.
I mean, the old wrestling term is get your ish in, right? IlFam790 in social media choice, but more importantly, every single Wednesday at 11:11 on the Black Wrestling YouTube. Something else, that's something else pod with no G, because we all the G we need, with my tag team partner, lovely Laveau. Shout out to the homie. Every Friday night at Where's Buffy on all social media. And if you're checking the Patreon, Black Watch, all kinds of stuff, man. Shout out to Tony Brown.
Mimi, do you want to go or you can follow me on Twitter at Davis, aka Drip, Instagram Davis DC. Like Fam says, we have a Patreon. I have a show there, White Noise, but you can follow us at Black Rasslin, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, merchandise.
It's White Noise because he's white.
But thank you for being an ally, though.
I always say, like, you can be an ally but still not be the best ally.
That's right.
Doing the best I can to support the people I'm with and the other voices I'm involved with. But it's just like, I don't believe in men who say they're feminists. It's that you can't just tag yourself with that. So the best you can do, Simper DV is a great ally too, and Emilio Sparks, Vin. But the best you can do is, again, share these voices that you're fond of and put people on, because you might be able to reach more than they can, unfortunately, because again, the system's built that way. And I'm just, again, I have a voice because they gave it to me. So I'm trying to help and share their message as well as mine.
Yes, definitely.
I don't have a spiel. They got spiels. I don't got spiel.
Turnbuckle talk every Tuesday.
Yeah.
Every Tuesdays at 7.
I'm Amy Michelle. Amy Michelle. Well, at least plug Wrestling Talk. I mean, Wrestling Talk drops when?
Turnbuckle Talk drops tomorrow at 6:35.
There you go.
6:35.
On it's Twitter Spaces with me and my boy Corey. And then you can find me with these
My
guys
condolences,
on
Corey.
Thursday.
Sorry for your loss, Corey.
Corey didn't even respond to my text message. Corey's an Eagles fan.
He posted a picture from Lincoln Financial, and then the next tweet was, "Good job, Kansas City."
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, come through
Tuesdays.
Yes, and of course, for those who are watching, know that you can find and follow me, your girl Stephanie Hardy, on Instagram and Twitter at Queen Steph Hardy, and of course, listen to the Hardy Wrestling Podcast everywhere you get your shows, and subscribe on YouTube at the Hardy Wrestling Podcast, and you'll find the purple and pink and blue logo, and just continue to support. Now, tomorrow I'll be having the somewhat of the same conversation with those wrestling girls. So please be on the lookout for that and continue to support us in Black wrestling media, not just on Black History Month, but always, because we out here, we're doing the work. So show us love. And, even if you don't show us love, we'll show ourselves love, and that'll be enough. So
facts.
So, of course, this has been the Hardy Wrestling Podcast and Black Wrestling Podcast with your girls Stephanie, Cal, Mimi, Fam, and Drip. And until next time, bye, y'all.
Oh, I love that. That's so cute. Oh, shit. Okay.
That's what we need.